Hey, and good evening. This is Tiger and AJ. Hey, Spectre, nice to have you on the chat already. Unfortunately, we had some trouble logging in. This is when you do a test and see everything is working fine, and then 3 minutes later, when you want to do it for real, it does not work anymore. Just says CD Radar. Hello, nice to have you on the stream. And yeah, without the intro today, so that I cannot tell you about the disclaimer during the intro, please don't ever forget that we are talking about playing computer games and not about running trains in the real world. So please leave the real trains and real railway installations to the professionals. What we are doing today, though, is play on a route that I have mentioned a couple of streams ago as maybe my least favorite DLC, the Hauptstrecke Rhein Ruhr. Is that I still have to find the appeal of this route, and maybe I have found the appeal of this route. Actually, it's not a bad route. It is a nice route, scenery-wise, and it has a lot of track, but not lengthwise, but more or less a lot of tracks next to each other. Theodoros, hey, nice to see you in the chat. Great that you made it to the stream. And we're talking about German signaling again, and one thing that always comes up when you read German signaling rules, der Anschließender Weichenbereich, the ensuing area of interlockings, or the ensuing interlockings. And those are especially important if you want to know for how long a signal speed restriction is actually valid and when you can start accelerating your train again. And so I thought this might be an interesting topic to talk about and look at it from 2 or 3 different angles while looking at the Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr, the route that runs from Duisburg to Bochum, or vice versa. And yeah, I have never played it on the stream, and so this is for the first time we're doing this. First, we're doing more or less a full run with the BR425. Yes, I gave it another chance, and it is actually not a bad route. And it looks quite nice. It has surprisingly good lighting during the night, in my opinion. And there are some other things that make it quite enjoyable. But still, it is a rather short route, and driving those S-Bahn services with those many stops, stop, go, is not exactly my favorite train driving style. But nevertheless, we will use the 425 and the 423, 2 S-Bahn trains from the 90s, squeakies, called because of the sound that their traction motors, or more or less the variable frequency drives connected with the traction motors, make. At least I think that they are all called creeches. Maybe only some of them are called creeches. Correct me if I am wrong here. What I like in the... Why do we not have any sound here in the game? Or do only I had it not on my headphones. So, just getting in slowly before we open the service for real. We are starting here in Bochum Hauptbahnhof and going to Duisburg. That is the whole line, and since we are the PIS system, we have to operate manually. We can see it here on the timetable. It's an Regional Express, a regional express train that is faster than the S-Bahn, and we're stopping not everywhere, so this allows us to go with 4 stops or whatever along the whole route. are we actually starting in Duisburg, not in Bochum. We're starting in Duisburg, going here through Essen, and this is Mühlheim here. This is the connection to Oberhausen. Then we are going, no, this is Mühlheim here. This is Essen here, and then the line splits. You have a northern part and a southern part around Wattenscheid, and then you end up here in Bochum. So this is more or less the whole route, and we are going from Duisburg to Bochum. The nice tower, yeah, that is true. There are some nice scenery elements in it, and as I said, the lighting is surprisingly good. It is a DLC that was released in the Train Sim World era before Train Sim World 2 was released and published. So it is rather old, but I think it is more fun playing than I originally may have said on the stream here. So what will we have to do to make this thingy work? First of all, what I like in the 425 is that it has this old analog MFA20 device with the round indicator buttons and those dials here instead of the digital displays. They are so much more enjoyable to read and watch when using those trains. So the 425, never forget, it has a limit of 140, even though those tracks that we are running on are sometimes rated to 160, so we have to do that on our own. What will we need to do to make this thing work? Insert the master key, reverse it to forward, then we are actually able to open the doors. This is the sound, the door buttons telling us we can open the doors to the right. Passengers are already leaving the train because it's taking us too long. You can see we still have the red marker lights on at front. It's this switch here, marker lights. So now they are white, and there is a second setting. If we need some high beams, then see, those are those lights. I think during day it is totally okay to run with marker lights. Safety systems, we have the PZB isolation switch and the CIFA isolation switch. We have LZB on our MFA, and but we do not have an LZB activation switch here. I do not know if this train actually has. Well, here it says PZB, LZB, Überbrückung, Bremse, LZB, Störschalter. So it would be on the train LZB, but it is not implemented in the game here. So we cannot use it on LZB lines. Theodoros, what are you saying? But no ETCS display, I assume, or can we use the Ebola, the other screen? No, at least in this configuration there is no ETCS functionality in this train. I think we need the Ebola screen anyway, and those ETCS MFDs typically have those split screen arrangement for the ETCS. I don't know if there are any 425s that can go ETCS, but at least not here in this DLC and in the game. Yes, it is the Fernmeldeturm CD radar, the telecommunication tower in Duisburg. And we have to operate the PIS system or FIS system, Fahrgastinformationssystem, by hand. How do we do that? We click the FIS, then Route eingeben, insert route. Then we have to specify if we want to set it for the first train set or the second train set or both of them. This is Zugverbund, the whole consist. Then we can choose. But then, what would we choose actually? We have RE11 Duisburg to Bochum. So RE11, maybe we find RE11. RE1, RE11 Mönchengladbach, RE11 Hamm. That's it. Normally it's a good idea to look at those screens and what they tell you. No, they say Kassel-Wilhelmshöhe. We have neither Bochum nor Kassel-Wilhelmshöhe that we can select here for RE11, RE11, RE11. what I can disclose at this point is that Hamm is the direction that we are going here. Is that so? I think it is. I think if we are going Kassel Wilhelmshöhe, then we are going towards Hamm. So I think this is the closest that we can get. Essen, Wattenscheid. And obviously Hamm is not in our DLC here, but this should do. Yeah, Spectre says Hamm should be the most appropriate. Mönchengladbach is the other direction. Yes, I think this is my orientation as well. And then we only have to close the doors. If you want to have some instrument lights, we have a dimmer here to set it. And then during day it is okay. If at night you can turn on the passenger lights here if they are not lit already. And this is the setup for this train. Interestingly enough, you can see what your passengers are doing. Can lower a blind, can open the door. There are blinds as well if you don't want them to look over your shoulder. So let's do it for real. And I chose this service because I think that we will be started with a green signal and a white 6 associated with it. Reverser, doors, lights, PCB. Careful, sometimes it is very easy to turn off the battery instead of turning on the PCB with those switches if you aim badly. This is one of the trains, interestingly enough. You can see here the brake pipe, Hauptluftleitung, that has an empty brake pipe when operating the train. What is typically unusual, because usually you would inflate the brake pipe to release the brakes, but here we have EP brakes, electronically or electrically controlled pneumatic brakes that work with an empty drained brake pipe, and the brake pipe is only there for emergency applications as a fallback system. So it is still there, but we usually run it empty. Train always needs like 25% power to release the brakes, then it takes a bit for it to start, then you can pump it up. PCB starting program would limit us to 40. We can release because we see a green light with more than 30. We see 6M. This is a set of 3, 6, limiting us to 60. And what we will be talking about is how long will this 60 be valid here. This M was obviously for we're going towards Mühlheim. Now we are at 90. Before that we had 80 track limit. I'm keeping to the 60 because this is what the signal said. We're going across a switch with 80, going into a line that allows us to go still 80, and now we are going on a switch that has 60, a 60 limit, see? And this is why they started us with a set as 360. And now we're done now. Can we accelerate now? As soon as we are out of the switch, here is a 15 LF6. First we get to 100, because we have not fully passed the 100 and the 50 sign. So can we accelerate now, or are we still limited to the 60? Well, we can accelerate, because we will see that the ensuing interlockings ended as soon as the train was out of the last switch in our path. So the rules for how long the ensuing interlockings, how long they are, where they end, are especially important for signals like this. Set as 3 white numerals. Again, don't forget we are limited to 140, because this is what this train is allowed to go. No, I think we are crossing the Rhine now, are we? Could have verified this. Theodoro says, oh yeah, I always wondered what the letter means in those signals. Can you explain more in future maybe, or have you done that before? The letters. I think I have done this before. This the Ruhr Spectre says. Great to have someone with a local knowledge. I thought the Rhine would be a bit... It would be too small or too narrow for the Rhine. And Theodoros, I have talked about those indicators, but it is actually... It is giving you an indication where you are routed. It is telling you about the path that you are sent to. And in your timetables, you can see a legend that tells you what those letters stand for. Quite often they are associated with the next bigger station that you're going to, like here Mühlheim. And we are passing, before we get to Mühlheim, Styrum and a second station at Mühlheim. And I think at Mühlheim Styrum there is the connecting line where you can go to Oberhausen, if I'm not wrong. If I'm not mistaken at this point here. But not in the DLC, in real life. Just checking that our Wachsamkeitstaste is working. That makes sense, Theodoros. Yes. "11 is announced. We don't necessarily need to acknowledge the 11 because there is no magnet associated with it. I still do it. Of course, I like to acknowledge every ZS3V that I see. I don't like how low you are sitting in this train, alright? Here is the 11. Oh, and I don't like that I missed my station because I was reading the chat. So with 100% brakes, that is always a nice wake-up call for the passengers. Whoops, and into emergency. Well, so much for that. We arrived early and got points subtracted for this. You see, typically 750 is the maximum that you can get. If you're arriving early, you get points subtracted. And, well, I think we will do the presentation in Essen. I think we're stopping in Mühlheim, Essen, and then in Wattenscheid, I think. So it doesn't look bad, this scenery, you know? It looks so nice and tidy and clean and green. So my impression of this area, Duisburg, Essen, Recklinghausen, it was not so green when I saw that last time. It looked a bit more like Isengard after the Ents had driven away the orcs, to be honest, but at least here in the DLC it is nice. Theodoros, I thought it was like specific radio channel for communication with dispatcher and stop rating spilled my coffee. Yes. I'm sorry for your coffee. This is why they don't allow train drivers to read the chat while driving. There's some sense to this. Yeah, there are also sometimes signs that give you the channel for the communication, but typically, at least in modern times, this is not the thing anymore. So we're getting a clear HP1, so no limit. We can go full line limit. That is back to 130 now that we are out of the station. The moon. So before we get to Essen, I think they will route us. No, maybe not. They will not route us through the Frohnhausen line. Because I think there is a 120 announcement sign missing. They have quite a lot of GPAs, if you remember. Geschwindigkeitsprüfabschnitte. Those PZB magnets that stop you if you are not slowing down properly in front of a speed restriction. We have a video about those. And there are some of them on this route here. And when you're going here and going towards Essen Frohnhausen on the rightmost track, what typically the S-Bahn services do, you can go 140 and then you have to slow down to 120 just at the stop in Essen Frohnhausen. And I think there is no corresponding announcement of this 120. So the GPA can get you without warning you in advance. But we're coming on the fast line. So there won't be a limit to 120. At Frohnhausen, you can see that the rightmost track is a bit lower, and on the right down there is Essen Frohnhausen, the stop where it always says Onkenstraße for whatever reason. And on the slow line you have this restriction to 120. That is secured with the GPA that can bite your bottom if you don't know that it is coming. This is Essen Ost now, I think. Reduction to 130 announced. Again, the Wachsamkeitstaste only for getting it into the muscle memory. I think this one is secured with the GPA as well, if you're not slowing down to the 130 properly. Here's the 130, and now we're getting a slowdown to 110. For Essen Hauptbahnhof. You might have noticed there was one of those isolated NE2 4-signal boards with a white downward pointing triangle on it, what indicates that the signal that belongs to that distance signal board is closer than 915 meters. We have talked about this on some stream, but I don't think that I have seen an instance of this signage anywhere else in the game. See that we get a better stop here without spilling coffee. That's nicer. Almost on the second. And now we are in Essen. You can see this is quite a big station. And this is what I meant. You always have a lot of tracks next to each other. But the route is quite short. So maybe this is some nice playground for the free roam, and to do some free roam experiments. I think Volvo was it on my YouTube channel who asked about some weird issues happening at Essen Hauptbahnhof. And well, as I said in the beginning, it was released prior to Train Sim World 2, so it is an right old thingy, and this might account for a route update with some static stock would be nice, says Spectre. Yeah, totally. And obviously I would always love that all those different junctions and possibilities for a more varied gameplay by sending you different paths and so on. But this is something that we can do now on our own with the editor and with the free roam. So if I had the time, I would totally look into that and see what paths you can actually use on those big stations and junctions and so on. But now the presentation for today. We are talking about what is said here, Anschließender Weichenbereich, the ensuing interlockings, or is a thing that always returns and comes back in the signaling rules. And well, to know how long you have to adhere to a signaled speed limit, you need to know how long the Anschließender Weichenbereich is and where it ends. And for that, we are talking about the rule that is set out here in our signaling book, Richtlinie 301. It is module 2, what is general rules in section 5, where there is the core rule that tells us how long the anschließende Weichenbereich is. For that, let's have an example. This is the track where our train is traveling on. Typically, we have a track for the opposite direction. Then here in our example, let's have a junction, so two tracks are coming in or coming out, and then there might be a siding here that you can access. Then we have a crossover, an Überleitstelle, where you can go from this track to the other or vice versa, and here in the opposite direction. So this let this be our example track, and then our train is approaching and we get a distance signal board NE2 with a flashing green. It is obviously the KS system, and ZS3V indicator telling us that we have to expect a limit to 60. We all know that. So this is the signal that we are getting, and then we are coming to this signal, the signal in front of this area here, of this junction area or station area, whatever you have here, and you have the white one, the 6, telling you from this signal on 60. And the question is, how long it is valid, this 60 here. This would be our home signal, Einfahrsignal, entry signal, if you want to translate it word by word, for this area here. And then let's say this is actually a station where you have platforms on both sides, and then at the end of the platform for our direction there is another main signal. Let's have it signaling N white 8 and set this 3V, not V, and set this 3 with the 8, telling you it can go 80 starting at this signal. And again the question is, how long is this valid when you're just starting your train and going on your way? So this would be the Ausfahrsignal, starter signal. We can see that there are still some switches and stuff behind that. Let's keep it simple. This would be my example track, example station. And the first thing that this rule is telling us, if the Weichenbereich, the anschließende Weichenbereich always starts at some signal. So it does not start in the non-signaled territory or in between. It starts at some signal, because we want to know how long do we need to adhere to a speed limit that is given to you by a signal. Obviously, the distance signal does not impose a speed limit at this point. It only warns you about an incoming speed limit. So there is no ensuing Weichenbereich after a distance signal. Does not make sense. So it typically, or almost in every case, it starts at the main signal, the Weichenbereich. So the first rule is, if it is a home signal, an Einfahrsignal, or a Zwischensignal, an intermediate signal, so on bigger stations you have, before you get out of the station again, maybe a second signal here before you get into the platform after you have passed this intersection here. So for Zwischensignale, intermediate signal, it is the same as for home signals. The basic rule is, it is the whole area until you get to the next main signal. But there is an exception, and this exception is quite important for us when we are running, like here, regio trains or S-Bahn trains. In case that your train has a regularly scheduled stopping point at some point, here indicated with this H indicator. Does not necessarily need to have an H indicator, but every time your train is, according to your timetable, supposed to stop here at some point, then the ensuing Weichenbereich ends at the stopping point. I hope you can see that here. I have a green bar here that is shorter than the blue bar and is associated with this exception rule. So if you are passing a home signal and you are supposed to stop before you get to the next main signal, then the ensuing interlockings end at the stopping point. Why is this important? Because after you've done your stop and you want to start your train again, if the anschließender Weichenbereich would end at the next main signal, you would still be subject to the 60 limit when starting your train again. But this is probably not what we want. We want to subject the train to the limit that is imposed by the starter signal. So if the train is starting at this point and sees a limit 80 sign here, then it can actually accelerate beyond the 60, because the ensuing Weichenbereich ended at the regular stop. If there are more than one regular stop between two main signals, then it is the last regular stop. So if there is a second stop, then the train needs still to keep below the 60, and only at the last stop it can accelerate faster. So this is an important exception to the rule that the ensuing Weichenbereich is the whole area between two main signals, and especially important for routes where you have to stop a lot. And then you don't need to feel bad if you forgot what this signal said, and just look at what this signal is saying, and you can accelerate to the 80 in this area. So that was what is associated with the home signal or the intermediate signal. What is it? You can find it in the Richtlinie in this notation here. Section 5, first paragraph, third sub-paragraph and then bullet point number 1. This is where this rule is laid out. What is the rule for starter signals? For starter signal, the basic rule is that after the Ausfahrsignal, the starter signal, the ensuing Weichenbereich is valid until you have cleared the last switch. So as long as there are switches in your path that you have to traverse, this limit is valid. This is why you typically get, as we just got it when we started our train, this is why you typically get the lowest speed limit that a switch has that is in your path until you are out in the open track. So even if there are switches where you can go 80 or 90 or whatever, you get 60, because this is, in our example, in our service here, the lowest limit that you encounter on a given switch in your path. So that is the basic idea. The ensuing interlockings are actually as long as you have cleared the last interlocking in your path. And typically in your timetable and in your Abula system, this position where you're actually out of the interlockings is marked with this yen sign here. So if you have wondered what this sign is actually telling you in the Abula and in the Buchfahrplan, this is a marker so that you can see now you are out of the last switch, now you are out of the Anschließender Weichenbereich, now you are no longer subject to this limit here, and you can accelerate to line speed, whatever it is at this point. Abula will tell you in real life, and in the game the HUD will tell you. And then you can, without feeling bad, accelerate beyond the 80. But your full train has to leave the ensuing Weichenbereich. Is there an exception? Well, there might be the situation where there are no interlockings after the starter signal at all. How long is the ensuing Weichenbereich then? Well, the rule says it ends at the starter signal. So it is actually not really a Weichenbereich, an interlocking area. It is more or less a point, the point of the signal. How does this make sense? Because the train has left this right away, right? Well, it makes sense because of the rule that, now let's see it again so that we have all four together. The rule is that the train must have cleared the end of the ensuing interlockings completely to be no longer subject to the speed limit. So in this case, let's go back to this situation here again. If you're starting your train here and you get an 80 limit at this point and there are no interlockings, then you are actually passing the point of the end of the ensuing Weichenbereich as soon as you pass the starter signal. But since your train is longer than 0, you will be subject to this 80 limit until your train has left completely the area that is guarded by the starter signal, until the whole train has passed the starter signal, and not before the train has cleared the starter signal. You can accelerate to line speed. So I think this is the idea why the rule says that in this case we have a very, very short ensuing Weichenbereich, but that still needs to be respected according to the number that is given you at this point. So 4 different variants, more or less, that you can encounter. If it is a home signal, typically the whole area until the next exit signal or starter signal. So if you're passing the station without a stop, then you are subject to the 60 for the whole area between the 2 main signals. If you are actually stopping, then the limit ends with the stop, with the last stop, and then you can accelerate from the stop according to the new limit. And if you are passing a starter signal, it is valid until you clear the last switch, or if there is no switch, until you clear the starter signal. That is not so super complicated, I think, if you just look at those 4 different colors and possibilities that you have. Now we have talked about a starter signal that gives you HP1 together with an ZS3. the white numeral in together, what gives you the specific limit. That is a typical solution, but it is not the only solution or the only situation where the ensuing Weichenbereich can be of importance. Obviously, the HP1 ZS3 combination does not always look like this with the white numeral in a rectangular box. You can have it especially with the HV system, sometimes in a triangular box. It is the same signal, even if it is not an illuminated number, but it is a fixed sign and then has this white border around it, or if it is not pointing upwards but pointing downwards and below maybe the signal. All this is the same signal. Looks a bit different but is telling you the same thing. It is always HP1 with ZS3 and 80 then here in this situation, and for this the rules for the ensuing Weichenbereich are valid. They are also valid if you are started at an HV signal of that kind, green over yellow, what is a slow signal, what typically limits you to 40. HP2 is the name. It can limit you to a different speed if it is given in the timetable, and obviously it can also be shown together with an ZS3 signal. What sometimes happen on Ruhrsieg Nord, for example, you get that a lot, those signals, HP2 together with a ZS3, that is giving you a different number than 40. But even if there is no white number shown with it, and it is limiting you to 40 or whatever is given in the timetable, this is also a situation when the rules about the ensuing interlockings are applied. So you have to stick to the 40, not longer than you are until you are out of the ensuing Weichenbereich. So that is important because you don't need to stay below the 40 until you get to the next main signal necessarily. As soon as you're out of the interlockings, you can go back to line speed. And then we have some special situations where those rules are also applicable, or quite similar rules are applicable. If you think back of, I think it was it last week or maybe the week before, I don't remember correctly, when we talked about Kennlicht. No, it was not last week. Last week we did Steam. But one of the last streams, actually, when we talked about the white lights. And there was one situation where you have one white light that is not flashing but steady. This is a Kennlicht. And the Kennlicht, the marker light, tells you that this signal is switched off deliberately, even though it is not malfunctioning, but it is switched off for whatever reason. We had it in the Zugdeckungssignal, for example. And when and if a dispatcher is starting a train by switching a red signal to a Kennlicht, then the rules about the ensuing Weichenbereichs also apply, or at least some of them, the rules that are applicable for the exit signal, until you are out of the switch area or pass a different position that is marked with this sign. This is what the rules say. You can read it here in the Fahrdienstvorschrift at this point. So we have at least some of the rules that are given for the ensuing Weichenbereich that is used in this situation. I have still to come across a situation in the game where this is actually done, that your train is started from a red signal by switching the signal to a Kennlicht. But it is obviously not so apparently not so rare in real life. It happens. What is the case with the Ersatzsignal? ZS1. We have talked about this in this stream about the white lights. It is more or less the same light, but now it is flashing, or it can be a different light, a different lamp, or whatever. It is a white light that is flashing, and this allows you to pass the signal. What we have not really talked about in this stream is when is it used, because it is quite interesting. Is this if the dispatcher wants to allow you to pass the signal, but for some reason the system does not work. It does not allow the dispatcher to set the signal to green, because it does not accept the path that the dispatcher wants to put down and allow the trains to go. But in a situation like this, maybe a malfunction something is jammed or whatever, but the dispatcher is certain that the path is clear, then he can allow you to pass with the ZS1 Ersatzsignal. But you can see this is actually quite a error-prone system, because the dispatcher actually gets a message from his dispatching machine that he cannot set the path that he wants to set. Maybe for a reason, because it is conflicting with a different path or whatever. And then the dispatcher thinks he is or she is cleverer than his machine, and he wants to allow you to pass as well. So this is a bit of an error-prone situation, sending someone with an Ersatzsignal. And then how does the driver have to drive the train after passing this Ersatzsignal? He will be limited, at least this is what I have read. I have not been able to find this in the rules. So if anyone knows where this is stated in the Richtlinien, please tell me, because I have not found it where it says this. But in some secondary sources you can find that after passing the Ersatzsignal, you are more or less limited to 40 kilometers per hour, just as if you had passed an HP2 signal. And this is valid for the Anschließenden Weichenbereich, for the ensuing Weichenbereich. And then you can go back to line speed. So passing this Ersatzsignal, what you have to do as a driver is more or less the same that you have to do after passing an HP2 signal. Please tell me if you know where this is stated in the rules, because I have not been able to verify this and find this situation in the rules. Same applies for this situation. You have a red signal with this M, this italic written M, red M on white ground with a red border, the M board set as 12. That allows you to pass this red signal with a verbal order. You don't need a written order, but with a verbal order alone. S-Bahn, Berlin, for example, you see a lot of those signs, and you can only encounter them. DV, is that true? Is it DV 301 only? Well, at least this is what I got out of the rules here. At least same here. I have found some secondary rules. DV, that means it is the Reichsbahngebiet, the Eastern Germany part. The secondary source that I read is that here the rules about sticking to 40 in the ensuing Weichenbereich also apply in this situation. Again, if someone knows where this is stated in the rules, tell me, because I have not been able to verify this. But some sources say that after passing the Ersatzsignal or after passing the HP0 red signal with a ZS12 and the verbal order, you are stuck to 40 in the ensuing Weichenbereich. What is more or less what you have to do when passing an HP2 signal, when you are started here at this signal. What is if you pass a red signal with the SH1 or RE12 with the two shunting lights? That is a totally different situation, what I can tell you, because you can only pass the red signal as a shunting service. And as a shunting service, you are anyway subject to different rules. So the ensuing Weichenbereich rules are not applicable to this situation when you're passing a red with the two white lights. Also, you will be limited to 40 because the Befehl 40 system does not allow you to pass the signal with more than 40, but what you have to do afterwards is subject to the shunting service rules. And as a shunting service, you're typically limited to 25 kilometers per hour, unless what I have found in the rules the other day, that you are getting a way clear message from the person who is in charge of the shunting, so that you can actually go faster than 25 and with 40 up to this limit. So the 40 is the magic number here, but those are different rules than as a shunting service, so the Weichenbereich rules are not relevant here. And if you're passing a red with a written order, this is more or less the plain red, and you want to pass it and you're getting a written order, then you're typically a Sperrfahrt, or at least a different Zugfahrt mit besonderem Auftrag. Then totally different rules apply as well. As a Sperrfahrt, you are again limited to 40 or maybe less. If you are pushing, or if there are specifically not secured level crossings and so on. We have talked about this in the Sperrfahrt stream on the Niedertalbahn. Those are different rules as well. So those situation here does not trigger the rules for the ensuing Weichenbereich. Also, two things that do not have anything to do with the ensuing Weichenbereich, that is more or less clear here. If you get an LF6 here, that is the black number on the white ground, not the white number on the black ground, but the black number on the white ground, then the Weichenbereich doesn't have to do anything with this as well, because here this limit is, as always with the LF6 signs, it is valid until you get a new limit. It does not end. Right, it is the track speed limit, the civil speed, that is posted here with the LF6. So this does not have to do anything with the Weichenbereich. And also this signal, the three yellow lights arranged in a V fashion for Vorsicht, caution, that can be shown with a red signal, and that allows you to pass this signal. Here's the HP0 with a ZS7, as we have seen, for example, in the in Bremen Hauptbahnhof, you can encounter this, for example. This is also a different regime, because here it has nothing to do with the ensuing Weichenbereich. Here at this point you are subject to drive on site until the next main signal. And this means specifically on site is again maximum of 40, but obviously, like on site, you always have to be not faster than that puts you in a position that you can stop your train in front of any obstacle. So at darkness it is typically 15. With poor visibility it can be down to walking speed. So this is not a thing that allows you to go 40, like the HP2 for example, even if you cannot see around the corner, but on site you maybe have to go slower than 40. And it does not end somewhere after the switch, but you have to go until the next Hauptsignal. And then you even have to pass the next main signal by the length of your train, minimum 400 meters if your train is shorter than those 400 meters. We have talked about this in a different stream as well. I just wanted to repeat it so that you can see that Ersatzsignal and Vorsichtssignal here trigger two different sets of rules for what you have to do after passing the signals. Here you have to go on site for quite a long distance actually until you have passed the next main signal, and here on Ersatzsignal you can actually go back to line speed as soon as you are out of the interlockings. If there are no switches at all, you can accelerate as soon as you have passed the signal with the whole train. So again, I thought this is maybe a bit of a more difficult topic and does not jump to the eye as red, green and yellow signal explanations, but I think it is quite important to deal even more effectively with signals that are given to you in the game, so that you know when you're actually allowed to accelerate after having seen a signal like this, and that you don't need to go the whole track with a speed limit of 40 after being started at the HP2 for example, and then the next main signal is 10 kilometers away and you're long out of the switches and you're still sticking to the 40 because you have learned that green over yellow limits you to 40. Yes. And again, if someone knows where the rules for what you have to do after passing Ersatzsignal ZS1 or after passing the ZS12 with the verbal order, please let me know so that I can actually see that it is still valid what the secondary sources say. I have a last part for the presentation with a signal that we have not talked about so far, but this we will talk about when we have finished this service here and go for a short while to the Hamburg-Lübeck track, and there we will do a very short free roam experiment and look at a ZS10 signal that we have not seen so far in the stream. Wattenscheid is the next stop, and at the same time, the second but last stop, I think. Again, we are going the northern line. We are not going to Essen Stiele, but we are going to... yeah, I think the next one is actually Wattenscheid already. LF6 with a 13. As soon as we're past it, we can accelerate. So many tracks next to each other. This must have been really annoying for whoever led the track for this DLC here. (130) is repeated. Now we are in the junction area where the line splits for the northern part and the southern part. Here, see, we are going to the northern part. What is this, the faster line? And here is Essen Stiele and Essen Stiele Ost and Essen Eiberg, I think, and all those. Another Wattenscheid station. Where you can stop when running on the S-Bahn. As soon as we are on this track here, we can accelerate to 140. We mustn't forget that we have to stop in Wattenscheid. Here's the 160 sign. Before that we had a 150 sign, but because our train is not allowed to go faster than 140, we have to stick to the 140. Thankfully in Germany, Theodore says, even with that complication, the speed is enforced by the point of announcement. Yes. I think with the signage in Germany you can really stick to the speed without having so much route knowledge. You almost always get it pre-announced. It does not jump onto you out of the blue. There was again a KS1 repeater with the marker light that should not be there. In the France system, the Z or V still kind of makes me confused. Well, yeah. To be honest, I do not really have any experience with the French system, except for the very, very little distance of track that is not TVM 430 in the LGV DLC. So I cannot really say how it feels if you actually drive according to it. So, Wattenscheid. Need a bit more brake than regularly because line is going downhill a bit. And again here. This is a repeater obviously, otherwise you cannot have this white light at the bottom, but it is a plain HP1 repeater, should not be on. Old arrow with the white additional lights on the KS system. Should only be on if it is a flashing green or a yellow. Spectre says, sorry I have to run. Thank you for the stream and the presentation. Have a good evening. Yeah, sorry to hear that, but have a great night. Was nice that you were here so far, and hopefully see you soon. Oh, what happened to our information system? Somehow we lost it. Or I fiddled around too much. We have the RE11 to hum. Should be the direction. Maybe I did not set it anew when I restarted the service. Oh, I did not lock the doors either. Maybe we should do that. Now we can go. So, and the next stop will be already Bochum. Just the train with a 146.2. Nice thing if the limiting factor for your speed limit is the maximum authorized speed for your train on tracks with a higher track speed, is that even if you go a bit beyond it, you are not getting docked on the point side. Now we are passing a KS2 distance signal, which should be acknowledged, telling us that the main signal associated with this is red. Should trigger 1000 Hertz, unlike this ZS3V. But no 1000 Hertz is coming. And the next signal is not red, it is yellow again. Here's a case 2. combined my main. Now we're getting our 1000 hertz, meaning we have to slow down below the 85 or the 80 if you subtract the margin of error. And then until we hit the 500 hertz magnet, we have to slow down to 60 so that we are not faster than 60 when hitting the 500 hertz magnet. And as soon as we get the 500 hertz magnet, we have to drop to 40 or below. So that is a bit of a weird situation. We pass a KS2 distant, and the next one is a KS2 main. And see, the radar says something I will read with interest as soon as I got my train to a standstill. This is Bochum Hbf. You see those pillars. Oh, I run fast. Far. Anyway. So what does the CD radar say? This is exactly before Prague Hauptbahnhof tunnels. There is yellow and then curves, so you expect red after the curve, but there is another yellow and red is in the tunnel itself. Aha, interesting. So do they do that to slow you down with the first yellow already, so that you are slow in the curve? Well, to be honest, I think this distance should not have been yellow, it should have been red. If... yeah, maybe the main signal switched after we passed the distance signal. So, you can see that this is an old DLC because you actually have to wait out the docking or boarding procedure before you can end your service. In the newer DLCs, the last stop is very fast. So that was that. And as promised, what I wanted to talk about in Hamburg. So we need the Hamburg marker. DLC Hauptstrecke Hamburg Lübeck. Well, the game is going back. Hamburg on mighty Elbe. Yes, the mighty Elbe, the Labe. Not the presentation. We don't need the presentation. No. So, okay, Hamburg Lübeck. And what do I want to do on Hamburg Lübeck? Free roam, and I want to go to Bad Oldesloe. Again, this name is not pronounced Bad Old Slow. It is Bad Oldesloe. And in Bad Oldesloe, we have a situation of that kind. Let's maybe go into the presentation and do the presentation first and then look at it in Bad Oldesloe. We have talked about this. You are started with your train at a starter signal. And let's say the starter signal shows you a quite slow speed of 40. Then typically the ensuing Weichenbereich would go as long as until you pass the last switch in your path. So all the way you would be limited to 40. And this can slow things down quite annoyingly long. So wouldn't it be nice if you can actually shorten the anschließenden Weichenbereich in a way that the train can start as soon as it has passed this point here, for example. Then it is across the switches that can take the train to a different track, and only this one switch here where the crossover is coming in from the other line has still to be passed before the train has passed all the switches in the line. So what possibilities are there to shorten this distance from this to that? How can I signal a shortening of the ensuing Weichenbereich? There are actually two ways to do this. One thing is you put up a sign here that is exactly again a ZS3 sign, but with the number that is indicating the line speed. So if 120 would be line speed here, and you have 40 at the signal, and want the train to go back to line speed earlier than after having passed the last switch in the way, then you can put up an isolated ZS3 sign showing a higher speed, typically the line speed at this point. And as soon as the train has passed the sign, then it can accelerate to the higher speed. This is only applicable, at least according to the rules, after you have been started at an HP1 or HP2 together with a ZS3 sign. Not, at least it is not mentioned in the rules, if you have been started at an HP2 without a ZS3 sign. So a new ZS3 sign in the same ensuing Weichenbereich can upgrade the speed at this point. And this is, in my opinion, the only situation, at least I have not found another situation where this makes sense, where this sign here can actually make sense. It is the 160 sign. And I have seen this in real life sometimes. I was just looking out of the window in the train when I was riding. I saw this sign. I thought, how does a sign of that kind make sense? Because it is a temporary speed restriction, not temporary, but it is a limited speed restriction that ends after the ensuing Weichenbereich. It is not an LF6, it is not a black on white, then it obviously makes sense. But it is a white on black that ends after the ensuing Weichenbereich. And since no train can go faster than 160 when they are signaled with wayside signals, so LZB, then they do not need to take notice of the signals anyway, then they can go faster than 160. But a train that has to be guided by wayside signals cannot go faster than 160. And how does a limited speed restriction of 160 that ends at some point make sense at all? Because where does it go back to? 160? After the 160 limits end? No, this does not make sense. But if it has been set up as an isolated ZS3, you can allow the train to go back at this point to line speed 160, even though there is still a switch in the path, so that the ensuing Weichenbereich has not ended yet. So I think this is the only situation where this sign makes sense. Tell me if there are other situations where a sign of that kind, and ZS3 with a 16 number, can make sense. This is the one situation with the isolated ZS3, but there is a special sign that is called the ZS10 Endesignal, but it is only in Western Germany, the DS301 area only. And it looks like this. And I am quite proud that I have found one of those signs in the game close to Bad Oldesloe. It also has not a sign version, but a light signal version. Then it looks like this. And this allows you to go back to line speed after having been started at a signal showing HP1 or HP2 together with a ZS3, or at a plain HP2 signal. This is the green over yellow without a numeral. Then you can be allowed to go back to line speed after passing this sign here. I think this was what I wanted to tell you here. So it is possible to cut the ensuing interlockings short to allow the train to go back to line speed faster, either by using an isolated ZS3 sign or by using the ZS10 Endesignal. And now let's see that this actually exists. Go back to Bad Oldesloe. We are... I think we need to go to the platform here. I think this house with the Mehlfabrik, Rotenfabrik Mehl, is one of the things when people say that the scenery has not been built up to the standards, because the writing on this building really looks a bit weird. So what train will we use? The 425, because we are just used to it. So, I hope I picked the correct. We don't need any doors here, we're going without. The lights are much stronger here than they were in... Look at that. Much stronger than they were in the DLC in the Hauptstrecke Rhein, where we have been before. I can't drive without those thingies on. Let's see if the train will start. I put the reverse to forward. Parking brake. Release. Number light is on. Okay, that makes sense. Nicht einsteigen. Makes sense. And see how bright the marker lights alone are here in this thing. Oh, it is actually a different version. It is not the one that we drove before. It has different lights, see? It has the LED lights. So it is not surprising that it is actually a stronger light. Some indicator lights maybe. So I can start my train. But the problem is, signal is still red. It is not totally forbidden to start a train if you can't see the exit signal or if you can't verify that the signal is clear. But typically you would not want to start your train against a red signal. Let's set a path for our train here in free roam. And let's set it out into the open track, like here, and see what we get. We are getting the situation that I've shown you before. We're getting a starter signal. At the starter signal we are getting an HP2 together with an ZS3 showing 5. So without this 5, this signal here would limit us to 40. Now it is limiting us to 50 until typically we get to the next main signal here. This is a main signal. It has already a 4 signal that is announcing that the next main signal is green. But because we have to go across switches to leave our position here, switch, 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 switch. A lot of switches until we are out in the open track. And then here is the ZS10 that I promised. As soon as we pass this sign here, we can go back to line speed. Why do we need it? Because further on, further on, further on in the path, here is another switch. And this switch would enlarge the ensuing Weichenbereich until this point here, before we can actually be out in the open and go back to line speed. So all the way we will be limited to 50, but since this does not make sense for this incoming switch at the crossover At this point, we are allowed to go back to line speed. This is why we have it here. Why they put it so close to the earth, to the ground, I do not know. There was enough of the post left, and I don't know why it is not straight. I don't know. At least this is here. Perfectly straight. So, CD-Ray, what did you see? Oh, that's the one with super bright red lights. Oh yeah, you're right. Maybe it is after renovation with new LEDs. Jackpot on that guesses, Theodorus. Perfectly alright. This is the point. Super bright LEDs. Not only on the headlights, but already on the marker lights. Here, see how bright they are. And those are not even the LEDs, see? The headlights are the normal light bulbs. So I don't drive this service. It was enough to demonstrate it on the external camera and why we have this here. I would like to see such a light on our metro trains, yeah. You would not need any street lamps anymore with those lights on your metro trains. Just light up the whole city from below. Okay, then I can change the DLC marker again. Go back to Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr because there is another service that I wanted to go on. To repeat what we have seen in the presentation. Hamburg-Lübeck timetable, and what is it? The service that I wanted to play. It is the 1618 service. From Essen Stele Ost to Mühlheim Styrum. That would be on the 423, I guess. Or not the 23, the 22. Oops, I crashed the game. Close without sending and start the game anew. MOW got not much pay to make that sign straight. They'd be like, ah, that's good enough. Sign the document, go home. Yeah, maybe some train kicked it over when accelerating at this point. So, at least it starts again, the game. So careful when using the search thingy for finding the train that you want to use. It can crash the game, as we have seen. Yeah, have you guys seen a sign of that kind anywhere else in a different DLC? Or in a different place? It's the only instance of this sign that I've noticed it at any rate. Sometimes you pass signs like this without noticing that. So, Rhein-Ruhr timetable. And then where is my 422 here? And what did I say? Oh, I did not put up the time in my marker. 1618. 1618. Those services that start at Stele Ost are a bit annoying because you're always slow at the first stop, because the combination of PCB starting program and the signal speed limits prevent you from going faster. And the AI trains typically do not give a damn about what the PCB is saying. So when they are doing the timetable, they are obviously faster than we are here. It's now a different train. Forward. Open doors. Leuchtmelder. Here the indicator for the brake pipe is not on top but on the bottom. But the other stuff is more or less the same. FIS. Where are we going to? Mühlheim. That means we are the S3, right? Only one S3. I think it is the Oberhausen. Ah, Spectre has left. But I think it is Oberhausen. But here what we can actually do is to check the PIS board at the station. And this is telling us that it is the direction to Oberhausen. Okay. Now I've wasted half a minute anyway. But let's see what is happening. We are getting started at this signal here with a clear HP1, but the PCB starting program is limiting us to 45, to 40, because we have to keep the margin of error. It cannot go faster than 40 now, and typically we would just release. But what happens then? You can see that we are passing a VR2 signal that we have to acknowledge. And releasing, if we are running into a signal that we have to acknowledge, will just bring back the monitoring that we released from. So releasing is not a good idea here, especially not if you want to accelerate beyond the 40. The signal would allow us to go 100 at this point until we get to the next signal. But the PCB is not allowing us to. And now we are passing. Let's go into photo mode to see what is happening now. So that I can read the chat. That was kind of remember 1 or 2 in TSC in the train simulator classic routes. But yeah, I not really understand what it means until you explained it just now. Thought it was something to do with grade. Me and my imagination. Yeah, it looks a bit like a grade symbol because it is pointing upwards. So, what is happening here? We are getting an HP2 signal as was announced with the VR2 signal. So, passing this signal, we are limited to 40. Here at this point actually starts the 40 limit. At the same time, we are getting announced the next main signal is a clear signal, HP1, and with a limit to 80. This is why we get the set as 3V with the 8 here. So this we will have to acknowledge. This one, the lower one, not the top one, not the main signal, but the Vorsignal. But only, you know that, if you are running faster than 95, what we are not. So technically, this should not trigger 1000 Hertz now. We will see if it is actually doing what it is supposed to. But when does the ensuing Weichenbereich for this signal here, what is probably a home signal because we are going towards a station, where does it end? The HP2 that allows us to go no faster than 40. If we, the problem is that we cannot go in photo mode with a fast speed. So now I acknowledge the 80. Yeah, correct. It is not giving us a new 1000 Hertz. You can see it if the yellow lamp goes off and on again, then you see they got a new 1000 Hertz, but it didn't. We have to stick to the 40 because it is an HP2 signal. This is obviously a junction, so there is a different track coming in from the left. And now we have the situation that we stop. We have a regular scheduled stop in front of the new main signal or the next main signal. So PZB allows us to go 80 now, but the signal is slowing us down. Starting program went out of the restricted mode. And this is why the combination of PZB starting program and the signaling will make you arrive always late here at this station, even if you don't waste the time as I did in the beginning. And now we have stopped, and the new signal is giving us HP1 with ZS 380. And this is the situation where the ensuing Weichenbereich after the home signal does not end at the next main signal, like here, but it ends already here at our stopping position. Oh, I might want to have some proper lights here. See, those lights are much weaker than the ones that we had. It's a different train, but still. Well, I should close my doors finally so that we can go on. Since we stopped, we are still in a restricted monitoring. But signaling wise, the ensuing Weichenbereich ended, so that we are no longer limited to 40 now, but can go to the limit here, the 80 that is shown. And since we are not getting anything that we need to acknowledge and can go faster than 30, we can actually release from our restricted monitoring. It beeps, it does not remove the yellow line, but this is a bug that we have encountered before. Actually, the release should have removed this yellow line here from the MFT, and you can see I can go beyond the 45 easily without getting a penalty break. So it works properly, the release, but it does not show on the MFT. Photo mode again. Ensuing Weichenbereich at the starter signal. Where am I now with my photo mode? Behind the wall? In the wall. No, I'm stuck in the wall with my camera for the photo mode. Interesting. Try again. Großartig. Well, what I wanted to show actually is where the ensuing Weichenbereich for the exit signal ends. Well, just let the train run, doesn't really matter. After the switch, after the last switch in the path. And since there was only one switch in the path, we can accelerate as soon as the train has cleared this switch and go to line speed of 120 as it is here. So we don't, even though we did not get a new indication, a new limit, we can go to the 120. So if you're always driving according to the HUD, then you would not have gotten the idea to stick to the 80 anyway, but if you want to do it properly, I think there is a limit to 100 here, yeah, you can see it at this signal. And you might have wondered whether you have to stick to 80 until you get to the next signal, and no, as soon as you are clear of the interlockings you can go to line speed. And then follow the indications of the signals here. We are already in 100. Why does it make sense to get another 100 announced after you are through the switches? Because the ensuing Weichenbereich ended, so actually you can go back to line speed. Line speed is 100 anyway, so it doesn't make a difference. But so it is actually a proper signaling to signal you a new limit to 40, even though the signal before already had a limit to 40, for example, or 100 here in this case. This is quite a sharp bend here for 100. We are back to Essen. We've been here before. Maybe this train on the left is our train in a different timeline. No, it's not. It's in the wrong station or platform. Camera is over the roof. But look, this lighting is actually surprisingly good for an old DLC. This train has actually a much longer door closing sequence than the other one. Maybe I just opened the other side, but still. But still, it takes longer. Or less long? No. It takes longer, so you can start earlier closing your doors. Oh, I'm already so far behind schedule that I should have arrived at Essen West before we even set out here. Well, it was an explanatory run, not a speed run. 120. Signals are clear, HP1, so no limit, we can go line speed right away. Limit of 100 is announced. Well, it looks nice in this lighting with the towers, church towers, telecommunication towers. Might not be the most flashy DLC, but it is definitely a solid one. The sky's on German flag mode, you see. Schwarz-Rot-Gold. Here's the black, then the red, and then the yellow. But it's more like black, yellow, and then red, no? So here, unfortunately, no new things to show about ensuing Weichenbereich. This is a very, very, very short piece to get from Essen Ost to Essen Frohnhausen. Bonkenstraße. What's the saying phrase about that flag color that goes something like, through the dark time something something we've reached the golden moment? Oh, you know stuff about the German flag? That I do not know. I have a bad feeling that the middle part has something to do with blood. Oh well, I've read it somewhere, can't really verify if it's official mass use. So now we're getting to a point where we need to be wary because there is another GPA, Geschwindigkeitsprüfabschnitt, but this time we're actually getting warned about the reduction in speed limit from 140 to 120, if I remember correctly. Here the 120 is announced. And we have to start slowing down because you can see it here. Here are the magnets for the GPA. First one ding and then the two close together. So if you are too fast here, not slowing down to the 120, they will slow you down. Then you get to 2000 Hertz and they stop you. We have a video and a stream about those GPAs, then there you can actually look it up. How fast you are allowed to go at this point. 90. That gives us 1000 Hertz. If you don't want to get the 1000 Hertz here, that forces you to slow down to 80. You can slow down to 105 and below before you hit this 90 advanced board. It's set as 3V. then you won't get the 1000 hertz. Here is the 90 that was announced. Since we got the 1000 hertz, we are below the 80 anyway. So it might actually be a bit faster to slow down to the 105 before you hit this Census 3V with the 90. And we are back in Mühlheim, where I've been here earlier. And here we are, and I think this is already the end of the service. Why is it the end of the service? Because this S3 train does not go to Duisburg, but it leaves, I think, the map here towards Oberhausen. And so obviously we cannot drive this, so it will be taken over by an AI and run through the portal towards Oberhausen. Again, we have to wait for the boarding procedure to finish before we are done with our service. Then we can close the doors. And we are... Oh no, we are not done. There is obviously another stop, or even two, between here and the junction to Oberhausen. That's why I put it in my marker, right? It's not Mühlheim Hauptbahnhof, but Mühlheim Styrum. Then we will do this. Mühlheim West is nearby. The limit to 100 does not really bug us, we have to stop anyway. Sometimes passengers pick up this extremely bright lighting that you have on the stations here. It looks a bit funny then. So, but Mühlheim Styrum will be the last stop for the junction to Oberhausen, and so the last stop in our service here. You mean they brought it home? The passengers, the bright light? I don't know, they somehow managed to put it into their heads. I was actually too slow for the 100 limit. Now I have to slow down for the PCB 1000 Hertz. That was triggered by the VR2 signal. Here's the 500 Hertz. For the red at the end of the platform. So, since we stopped 500 Hertz, we are now getting controlled to 20, 25 respectively. And then the AI can take this train to Oberhausen and out of the map. Yeah, that was that. The driving was not so great in this service, but nevertheless, the service actually, especially in the beginning, can show you some stuff about ensuing interlockings, where they end and where they start. Yeah, and sometimes there is actually some traffic on those many tracks. This concludes the stream for today. Thank you very much for staying with me, Theodorus, talking to me, and everybody else as well. I hope I will be back next week, Sunday evening. Thank you very much for your time, for your input, and take care. Have a nice time.